Good evening. I'm Dr. Melissa Green. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and registered yoga teacher. Uh, Tonight, I'm going to talk about the stress of dementia caregivers. I'm going to talk specifically about 8 different types of stress that relate to dementia caregiving. But before I do that, if you have not already done so, I want you to be sure to get my free resource. It is a list of signs that you might be overwhelmed or feeling burnt out. So it's 10 signs of caregiver stress. I will leave the link to access that resource in the comments below this video. So caring for someone who is ill or injured, or someone with dementia or some other type of condition that requires a lot of support can cause a lot of stress. So I'm going to talk about 8 different types of stress that people generally experience when they're caregiving, really in general, but I'm specifically talking about those people who are caring for loved ones with dementia. The first type of stress that I want to talk about is geographic stress. In many families, people are spread out all over the country or even all over the world. So some people may be trying to help with the caregiving from a distance. And that person who lives far away, that could be you, or you could be the person who is closer to the your loved one with dementia. But the person who actually lives far away may feel a little disconnected and may struggle to figure out how they can be supportive. So, here are some things to consider if you are supporting with the caregiving of a loved one with dementia. Definitely you want to frequently express your gratitude and appreciation to the primary caregiver for the work that's being done. Oftentimes there are things that are being done that are not always discussed with everyone who is physically present, and it's not because they're trying to keep things a secret, but things sometimes happen so quickly that they don't get a chance to inform everyone of what's going on. So showing your appreciation frequently is very helpful for that person that's the primary caregiver. You may want to consider doing something like, paying for a trip to a hair salon or to a barber shop for that primary caregiver in the event that you're not able to be there physically to help with the caregiving responsibilities. It's nice to do something for the person or persons who are there physically on a day-to-day basis. If the person with dementia is living at home, you could pay for a maid service to come in and come in on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, bi-weekly, whatever suits your budget, or maybe just for a designated period of time, for 2 weeks or for a special occasion or something that they may need some assistance with cleaning the home. If there's medical equipment that your loved one needs that maybe their insurance or Medicare doesn't cover, you could assist in that way by helping to purchase those things or contributing with the rest of your family in order to be able to obtain that equipment. I think it's also important to encourage that primary caregiver to express exactly what they're thinking, what they're feeling. Encourage them to vent. Sometimes they may feel frustrated or sad or angry. And if you can't be there physically to assist with some of those things, at least find a way to listen and actively listen and be mindful when you're listening so that they feel heard and appreciated and validated. You could also spend some time gathering special treats, or if there's something specific that you know that person, that primary caregiver likes, you could put those things together in a box and send them to them, or have a service to send something out special for them, or pay for like a trip to the spa or something as a way of showing your appreciation. And again, those are things that people can do if they are caregiving from afar. So most of those things are supporting the primary caregiver, but there are also things that you can do as far as like purchasing equipment and things like that for the actual person with dementia. The second type of stress that I want to talk about is financial stress. So that's something that's very common in families when there's a person within the family that requires an excessive amount of care. Caregivers often end up spending a lot of money out of their own pocket to cover expenses that are not covered by insurance or by Medicare. And then those family members who are not as involved may not realize what expenses there are that are being covered out of pocket, right? So that could cause even more of a financial burden for those people who are actually there and caring for the loved one. Um, Also, the primary caregiver might be required to work less because they need to be present with their loved one, or they may have to take a job that's less demanding, which could be a job that pays less, or they might be required to stop working altogether just so that they can be there to be a full-time caregiver. So all of those things could result in financial strain. The third type of stress that many people have to address when they're caring for a loved one with dementia is cultural expectations. So in some cultures, there's an expectation that maybe the daughter or a female will be the person that's going to be the primary caregiver. There may be an expectation that the person with dementia stays in the home. It might be seen as disrespectful to place that person in a facility or somewhere outside of the home for care. So that could cause more stress because it could require people to have to make significant adjustments to their lives in order to be able to support the person in the home. The fourth type of stress is family and relational stress. So, in addition to the other stressors that I already mentioned, these things can create tension between family members, right? And it could cause to turmoil if those things are not openly discussed and resolved as they come up. It could lead to family members being resentful towards each other. So that's another thing to be aware of. The fifth type of stress that caregivers deal with is physical stress. So, caring for an impaired person can be physically demanding. You may be required to do a lot of extra activities, cleaning, cooking, shopping, doing laundry, preparing meals, in addition to having to do those things for yourself. So it could be very exhausting for the caregiver that's taking on all those extra responsibilities. And sometimes it also may be necessary for you to have to assist your loved one, like physically assist them if they have limited mobility. And that could be dangerous because you could get injured or the other person could get injured if it's not done correctly. And sometimes, you may need other people to support you in doing that. So there could be physical stress from all of those things. The sixth type of stress that dementia caregivers are often faced with is deciding if and when they need to make alterations to the home. So if the person with dementia is living in the home, then there may be things that need to be considered, like putting up railings or building ramps or things like that, or putting chairs in the shower so that the person can get in and out easily. All of those things have to be considered. And the people, if there are other people who are living in the home, will have to adapt to those alterations within the home. And there may be cases where the person cannot remain in the home. So they may have to move in with a friend or a relative, or they may be required to be placed in a special type of housing, assisted living, personal care home, or skilled nursing facility. The seventh type of stress is social stress. So for those people who are primary caregivers who are providing support 24 hours a day, it can significantly impact their social life because it may cause them to be isolated from friends and family, and even those people who are not serving as caregivers 24/7. If a large part of their time is spent with caregiving, it may take them away from things that they might normally be doing with friends and family, and it can cause a strain in those relationships. And for those people who really want to take time out, maybe like once a week, to go out with friends or family, or even monthly, they may not be able to because they may not have anyone else who can give them respite or come in and step in and take over. So it can put that wedge between them and their friends and family. It can also, one other thing I want to mention about the social stress, that can cause a buildup of anger towards the person that's receiving the care, towards their loved one, if you notice that the caregiving is becoming a wedge between you and your friends, or you and your family, your spouse or your kids. And that's why some people refer to that as like the sandwich generation, right? Because you're there stuck kind of in between an aging parent and caring for that person, or an aging loved one that's a family member, and your family, who is also looking to you to do certain things for the family. The last type of stress that I want to talk about is emotional stress. So you can imagine if you are dealing with geographic stress, cultural expectations, financial stress, family and relationship stress, physical stress, social stress. all of those things can lead to emotional stress or emotional distress. And when a person does feel that emotional distress, it's not uncommon for them to have other types of strong emotions, anger, and resentment, as I mentioned, about the magnitude of harm, feelings of deprivation and isolation. They might also feel anxiety or feel frustration about unresolved conflicts between family members. They might feel resentment about losing their privacy because they may have to move in with their loved one or have their loved one move in the home with them or with their entire family. They might also feel frustrated over their inability to control what's happening to their family member, and sadness as they notice that their loved one is starting to decline as far as their health. Sometimes people who are caregivers may have fantasies about placing their loved one in a facility, assisted living facility, or skilled nursing facility, or they may even wish that that person would die, and then they could have feelings of guilt for actually having those feelings, right? Or deny that they even have those kinds of feelings. So having all of these conflicting emotions and strong emotions can result in the person, the caregiver, becoming really stressed and overwhelmed, and eventually feeling burnout and not feeling capable of continuing in their caregiver role. So it's important to find ways to take care of yourself. But along with those negative emotions, you as a caregiver or whoever is a caregiver also probably feels love for your family member and feels some type of satisfaction that you're making a difference in that person's life. So, again, a lot of conflicting emotions that can result from being in that caregiver role. But I just wanted to bring your awareness to some of these things and also to help to normalize some of these things that people experience, that people often don't talk about, some of the thoughts, some of the emotions. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, that if you are interested, you can grab my free resource, 10 signs of caregiver stress. I will put the link to that resource in the comments below this video. This is Dr. Melissa Green, licensed clinical psychologist and registered yoga teacher. Good night.